a double take of one of the most loved villains in My Hero Academia, Twice. It feels strange sometimes having sympathy for people on the wrong side of history, but if we're gonna make an exception for anybody, and I do mean anybody, I think it should be Twice. Who is Twice? Jin Bubagawara? Bubajawara? We're just gonna call him Jin, because I ain't got time. That is his government name, and he was a member of the League of Villains. His villain outfit was very infamous. It was very nice. But as a civilian, he was a 30-something-year-old blonde man just trying to survive, and his quirk was Double. Now, Double allowed him to create a copy of anything through touch, 2 at a time. With this, Jin could produce replicas of people to overwhelm opponents with numbers. But there were conditions, of course. The first is that he had to know the physical measurements and features of what he was trying to replicate. He could only create 2 doubles at a time as well. Now, the catch-22, because he could copy himself and his copies could also copy themselves using Double, he could technically create an infinite army of himself. That's a pretty badass power. His doubles had the same personality and abilities as the original. It was nearly impossible to tell the real Jin from a clone. However, they only remember events up to their last interaction with him, and as you'd expect, the obvious drawback was durability. The copies were weaker and easier to destroy. If you finished the final season of My Hero Academia, go ahead and give me a like, and hopefully you didn't cry like a baby like I did. It was so hard for me to get through that, but I had to see it through. Now that we know about his quirk, let's talk about why he was so loved. Jin had the perfect backstory to fall into villainy, and that's something that we see a lot in stories like this, so we're kind of used to it. Both of his parents were gone, deceased. He lost his job and his home. You know, using his quirk for crime was done out of survival, not just because he wanted to live a life of crime. So when the League of Villains took him in, he was genuinely grateful. He supported them heavily because to him, the League had become family and he didn't have one. He even used his quirk to create copies of himself just to feel less alone. So that tells you a lot about him as a person. His power literally became a coping mechanism for his loneliness. So the real question is, after falling into crime because of his circumstances, did he really feel like he had any other options? I personally don't think that anybody is beyond redemption, but being shaped by your environment and being stuck in cycles is something that's more common than people want to admit, and it's not always easy to pull yourself out of that. As for his personality, Jin was incredibly unique, explosive, lively, and he actually had a very comedic demeanor. He was also mentally unstable though. He had a several day-long battle with his clones, and it left him unsure of whether or not he was the original. So this identity crisis drove him to insanity and changed him into a more manic villain. So it went from worse to worser. Even through all the personality turmoil, he level sets a bit, but he still suffers from occasional relapses. Despite this, through it all, he is down for his hitters. Do you hear me? He remains loyal to his friends, well, more like his family, the League of Villains. So what does all this mean, and how does this prove that he was so loved? Next episode, please. Well, I got you. Hold on. I think he was loved by some of the fans because he provided comedic relief as a villain, and most of us are able to warm up to people who can make us laugh, even if they're bad people or bad guys. And don't act like that don't apply to you, because it does. He was also loved by the League because of his faithfulness and his loyalty. And don't worry, I could never forget to mention his relationship with Toga. Now, I don't think there was ever gonna be any romance between them, but we definitely saw how close they were. And I think that was the case because she really accepted him as he was. And I think there is in life a type of love that's deeper than friendship, but not romantic. And whatever name we would give to that, I think that's what those two characters had. And then there's Hawks. Now, Hawks saw Twice as a man who could have lived differently under better circumstances. So I think that's why he hesitated, because he knew that Twice wasn't evil at his core, but he was dangerous because of his power, his quirk, and his loyalty. And the quirk itself wasn't necessarily dangerous, but how he was choosing to use it as a villain was. So that's what made that situation end up being even more tragic. Hawks respected Twice's heart and sincerity, but he also understood that had he lived, he could create an unstoppable army. So Hawks was forced to make a very painful decision, and this just shows that even heroes were capable of recognizing Twice's humanity. Comment right now how you feel about Twice. Did you love him? Did you hate him? Do you think he could have ever been a hero, or was his fate sealed from the very beginning? I really hope you loved this video, and if you didn't, then I'm sorry. I hate to hear that, but hopefully you'll give me a chance on something else. What you should do now, though, is check out my video on why the final season of My Hero Academia just doesn't really feel that final to me. But above all else, make sure you don't forget to subscribe. When one arc ends, another one begins. See you next time.